Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest, Kevin, and that's going to be Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so you had some interesting stuff on Netflix. The stock's had a pretty good run over the last several years. It's only up about 10% so far this year, but post Squid Game, Andy, what are you guys seeing as far as data goes from LikeFolio on Netflix?
Well, this is a really, really important time of year for Netflix. Very few people understand the churn factor that happens around New Year's Eve when people sit down with their credit card bills, and for the one time of the year, they're going to really go through it line by line and start canceling the things that they don't use. That happens a lot on New Year's Day. We've discovered at LikeFolio. And so Netflix understands this and have gotten ahead of the game many times. But this year seems to be especially effective with the Squid Game rollout and the subsequent audience rush to watch that. We're seeing mentions of people watching Netflix actually reverse a downward trend from 2020, which we expected because of the lockdowns and pandemic that were going on last year. Tough year-over-year comps, but we're seeing that reverse earlier in the year, much earlier in the season than we normally do. You can see it on this chart here. A really nice bump from Squid Game, and that's the type of thing that can really make a huge difference for these subscription-based revenue companies like Netflix. And when we compare it to peers like Apple TV, HBO Max, Hulu, Peacock, and especially Disney Plus, you can really see that on a quarter-over-quarter basis, Netflix far outshining its peers and competitors and retaining its title as the king of original content. And I think that's going to do this company a lot of good. As we head into 2022, there's a lot of economic uncertainty. We expect there to be a lot of people dissecting those credit card statements, a little bit more subscription churn than normal this year, and Netflix getting out ahead of that and preventing it through its original content is very good to see for this company.
Andy, this Netflix is the pioneer in streaming, and they have a big lead on everyone else. Right? They have 213 million global paid memberships. Their growth is 80% of their growth right now is currently outside the U.S. That is an amazing stat as they go forward. And that's why you're seeing, I think, shows like Squid Game and more foreign appealing shows like that. But Andy, here's another small thing that just blows my mind when I hear it. 41% of their daily viewers, 41% aren't members. They're sharing with someone else. So imagine the growth there. Number one, imagine the international growth as they bring out more and more new content. Imagine the growth if they ever made it one person, one membership. And then imagine what they can do with more and more originals, adding to both those metrics. I think it's crazy for me to even think this, but the growth of this company might be just starting, and they are in a dominant role in streaming. Andy, your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely right. I think that they've proven that they can create great content that people want. I remember when Netflix was all about, if they had your movie or not, and that was most of the complaints. And now you hardly even hear people talk about going to Netflix for their existing library of movies. It's all about original content. Netflix, like you said, is far ahead of everyone else in that regard. And I agree with you on the growth angle. I think Netflix is smart enough to understand that the sharing of passwords and sharing of accounts is a net positive for them as long as it stays under some level of control, and that actually their method of getting people to get their own account will come through through features on the software rather than restrictions on the software. And I think if they can do that over the course of 2-3 years, like you said, it can convert a lot of people who are using shared passwords into paying members voluntarily. And I think that's the key. and I think that's the way that Netflix is going to grow. And like you said, it's an international company. There's 8 billion, 9 billion people, whatever it is in the world, and that market is all theirs for the taking. It's unfathomable how big this company could get, despite how big it already is.
Yeah, and Andy, if you look at some of that data that they're providing, so they're moving over to this new way that they look at the metrics, where they look at hours watched, right, as opposed to somebody that watched one of their hit shows for more than 2 minutes. So a lot of the other streamers do that also. Roku, I know, does that. Hours watched, which should be a boon when they have hits, like inexpensive hits like Squid Game and, the Tiger King, where they're cheap to make, right? But then they get all these additional subscribers based on that type of hit show. But now they're coming out saying they're going to spend more money on big names and big names like Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Jason Momoa. They're working with bigger filmmakers. Is this what you like to see out of a company that, when you guys track their data that comes out, that, hey, it's all about content anyway. So even if they're spending money and they're still making some, films or projects that are cheaper that get more new people on, but you still need that basically that hook on social media that, hey, I'm watching more of it and more of my time is spent watching Netflix.
Yeah, I think so. It's really two things. The company's doing a fantastic job on doubling down on what works. And that's something that this company has done for a really long time, and we have to applaud them for that. They aren't afraid to make big bets in the direction that is working, and I think they will continue to do so until it stops working, as they should. And then on the other side, in terms of the original content, the big names versus the cheap stuff, it's a mix. It's a diversified mix and approach where you don't know exactly what's going to stick with consumers. But I do love, as an investor, a potential investor in the company, as thinking about it from a shareholder perspective, I think that the hours watched metric really aligns the company with both its consumers and its investors. It's a really honest way to look at the success of the company, because the more time people are spending on your platform, the more you're creating value for those customers, and therefore creating value for your investors. So I think that honest way of looking at it will be a little more volatile. Will be a little tougher pill for some comps to happen. But overall, it's a really transparent way of doing things, and I think it's the type of thing that an industry leader should be doing. And Netflix leads the way once again.
Yeah, Netflix leads the way, Andy, but as of September, their share of U.S. viewing time stood at only 6%, while cables was still at 38%. That blows my mind at this point. So the opportunities that they have there are still there. But if you guys look at this on a score basis, the stock's down like $120 from its all-time highs above $700. When you look at that and the 8% drag down that we've seen this month so far, does that equate to maybe some of that data that you see at the start of the year, or do you look at this as an opportunity for investors?
Yeah, no, I look at it as an opportunity. I think this is one of the best companies in the world. And just like Netflix continues to double down on what's working, I think that, a lot of times investors could take that same attitude towards the stocks or investments that they have that have been working. So, for the last decade, doubling down on Netflix on dips has worked, and I don't see any data from LikeFolio's perspective or from what we see from the company that suggests that trend is reversing anytime soon.
Yeah, and once again, Netflix proves, even with Squid Game, content's king, and I think that's what is going to get the metrics up and your data positive once again based on Squid Game. So we'll continue to watch that. Thanks as always, Andy. Great stuff.
Thank you.